Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at the 1959 through 1963 Fleer baseball cards. This is the beginning of Fleer as a name in the sports card world, and it's basically an island at least in their history, but really in the sports card history too. Because Fleer got involved in making baseball cards right after Topps had established a monopoly over both baseball cards and football cards, and were actively engaged in a half and half relationship with Parkhurst for hockey. So the problem with trying to compete with Topps in the monopoly is the fact that the monopoly was built around modern players, active players. And Fleer realized that there was an opportunity within that where they could make cards of legendary players from the past, because Topps didn't bother to spend any money on players from the past. That wasn't a part of the sports card world. So with Ted Williams, that gave Fleer the opportunity to come in and make a card set dedicated entirely to the legendary player. These cards are very simple in their design. The simple white border with a little area down at the bottom for text for each of the chapters of his career. And then a wonderful drawing that shows whatever portion of the story they happen to be telling. And it's a complete story. This whole card set dedicated to Ted Williams looks at his career all the way from when he was a kid with a lot of potential and a lot of dedication and a lot of skill, all the way through his career. So it's a story about his evolution as a player, that because all of the cards are drawings, they didn't have to worry about trying to scrounge images to reflect what they were talking about, which gave the card set a wonderful cohesive look. And because they were all in color, there was a vibrance that really carried well for fans who still remembered extremely well just how great Ted Williams was. He was a legend, and so his packs were able to sell basically on that merit. Great card set. So with that in the bag, Fleer realized they had an opportunity because Ted Williams wasn't the only player, there were others. So in 1960, they went and made another card set, but in this case, it was called Baseball Greats, a card set dedicated to legendary players and legendary figures from Major League Baseball. The cards are, they look really more like reprints of old cards from the past. They have photo book corners, which are very large with a bright color and very overpowering, and then images inside that look like they're old images. Really, the images look more like they're cheap images that they were able to get their hands on. There's no vibrance to any of these images. The way that the set looks is so different from what kids were used to collecting in Topps packs for the modern players. It was almost like Fleer threw this together as best they could. Again, great legendary players for sure, that certainly is the case, but there was no card market at the time. There wasn't the amount of both market and conversation for kids to really be aware of these legendary players. So it had an advantage because it gave kids a window into these players, but at the same time, there wasn't enough of a conversation about most of these players for kids to really be aware and necessarily to care. So the card set needed to kind of sell itself, and this card set right out the gate looked like it was a card set from 20 to 30 years ago, not at all a modern card set. But they did include something fun in packs, which was inserts, specifically decals. The decals are of every single one of the Major League Baseball teams, everyone from the American League and everyone from the National League. It's the logo in the middle and then a border virtually around the outside, just kind of indented. And of note is the fact that the back of these cards looks very industrial. It has a number that's not a serial number, it's just a number. It's like a product number, which means the 1960 decals look like they were kind of cranked out and weren't completely finished, which is something I want to note because I'm going to be getting back to that in a second. So later on in the year, they made a football set where they were able to take advantage of the fact that there was a new football league, the American Football League, the AFL. And so they were able to make cards of the AFL where Topps was making cards of the NFL. So they were able to stand alongside Topps in that area. So now they're making two card sets, a baseball set and a football set. So they're really set up to be a sports card company. And so in 1961, they stepped back into baseball, making another baseball great set. In this case, it is a card set that, while built on the same concept, the cards look totally different. In this case, the cards are very vibrant, extremely vibrant, with an American flag theme on the card, with stars up at the top and stripes down at the bottom, and images that are a lot more exciting, and they look more, not so much modern as much as they seem important. They don't seem like old players from the past. They seem like significant players from a time that was exciting to be a fan of the baseball, or of the league. And even the back has kind of a modern look to it, relatively speaking, which was a big improvement over what they'd done in 1960. So now, here in 61, the cards actually look like they're supposed to be modern cards, and they're more engaging to kids. But what's really fun about this card set is that card number 1 is a card that has 3 players on it, including Ty Cobb, but the back of it is a checklist. And checklist cards, it was very unusual for a checklist card to have a full normal card front with a checklist on the back. That's something that would be common in the 90s, but here in the 1960s, that really wasn't the reason. Collectible checklists weren't really the main idea that was going on, and here this was card number 1. It kicked off the entire card set, so it's really kind of an innovative and fun card in this card set. They did once again do inserts in packs with the same decals as the previous year, almost the same. There is a difference between the decals of 1960 and 1961, but really the way to tell is that on the back of the 1961 decals, they actually have an advertisement. So these ones are a lot easier to tell or to recognize, but they also had another insert. They had 2 inserts in every pack. Along with the decal, they also had a sticker. And the sticker is a small sticker of a pennant from a World Series. The pennant has the team that won, and then it has the record of the number of games won by both the winning team and the losing team. So they don't have any other statistics. They didn't really get into it. They did a pretty basic one, but at least you can see, if you got the whole set of stickers, you can see all the different final tallies of games won by the 2 teams, World Series by World Series. So they followed this up by another football set, but the football set now was competing head-to-head with Topps. They get back to AFL and NFL following the 1961 year, and then they decided to make a run at basketball to close out the year. That would not stick. They just do one shot at it. But by 1962, they were no longer in the baseball card market. In fact, in 1962 proper, they only did another football card set. But in 1963, they got back into baseball, where they decided to just go head-to-head and actually make a baseball card set. And the cards that they created were actually of pretty significant players. Now, I have to note, unfortunately, Topps lawyers caught wind of this, and they stamped this out in a hurry. Almost fast enough to make sure the cards never made it out. But Series 1 cards did make it out. So we have the first portion of the set, and so that means that at least a small part of the set is available with some star players in it. And you can see that these cards are actually pretty modern for the early 1960s. Simple white border, area down at the bottom for player name, and then they have a big color diamond with a logo in it, or not a logo, but with a drawing in it that takes up a lot of real estate but gives a very strong theme to the card, and then a wonderful color photo of each of the players. It's a real shame that we didn't get more of this set, because this set could have stood right alongside Topps, but Topps was very good at stomping this all out and making sure that there would be no competition. Fleer would go on to make one more football card set in 1963, and then they would be done with cards until 1981, when they would win against Topps and then lose against Topps, and then ultimately they figured it out, and both Fleer and Don Russ were able to make baseball cards starting in 1981 moving forward. But in the meantime, they did, by the end of the 1960s, start to make baseball collectibles. And they had cards associated with it, which is a whole story I'm not going to get into here. But for the entire 1970s, Fleer was a baseball card adjacent company. And in fact, they were making football cards during the 1970s as well. That's a separate video I've already done if you want to go check that out. But like I said, I'm going to look at the late 60s through to 1981. I'm going to look at that window of time for Fleer in 1 or 2 videos. I'm not sure yet. I haven't tackled it yet. And then I can get into Fleer in the 1980s. So it'll be fun to get to that point. But in the 1960s, there was this really fascinating window of time, an island of time, where Fleer, and actually Leaf for 1 year as well, were making baseball cards, doing their best to try to either occupy a space under the umbrella of Topps or try to see if they could actually compete with Topps. The answer to the latter, of course, was no, but the answer to the former was, well, kind of. And so it's fun to see that little window of time when Topps had competition to the tune of 1.5 card sets in 1960 to fend off. But yeah, it is a shame that they weren't able to make it stick and that we'd have to wait until the 1980s to actually have competition, because competition is good, as much as the league's pocketbooks like to think otherwise. So there we have looking at these sets. So do look out for the videos that I put up eventually when I go into the rest of Fleer after this for baseball. I've already done football for the 1960s and for the 1970s/80s. If you haven't seen those, definitely check those out. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. And thank you very much for watching.